Hello, Worldview listeners. I want to take a moment and give a shout out to my friend Luke and his team at increasecreative.co. This season of our podcast, Luke has been helping his team there to produce the content that I hope that's been a blessing and encouragement to you. It's been a help to me to have his behind the scenes work, and I want to give him a shout out and let you guys know about his company. Increasecreative.co is a great partner for you to consider for powerful church communication. Luke's team can create custom websites, compelling graphic designs. They help with original video and, as you've noticed, original podcast content. It allows people like you, people like me, to connect with our communities. So I'd encourage you to let them handle the creative aspect of what you need help with so you can focus on your mission. Take a moment, visit increasecreative.co to learn more about how Luke can help you. That's increasecreative.co.
Welcome to Worldview, a podcast featuring teaching and conversations with Dr. Mike Lester that focus on helping faithful disciples develop a biblical worldview. Thanks for joining us, and here's your host, Mike Lester.
Well, hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode here of Worldview, where we are discussing where theology and faith and culture and leadership all overlap. And we have been taking a journey this particular season on learning how to lead when the path isn't clear. And today, as we are finishing up sort of this last bits of the process, we're talking about communicating to our team. And today's episode is Don't Shoot the Naysayers. How do we deal with people who are sometimes critical of the decision we've just made for the organization? And it affects them, and they are pushing back against the decision we're making. Winston Churchill said, "Criticism may not be agreeable, but it is necessary. It fulfills the same function as pain in the human body. It calls attention to an unhealthy state of things." Back in the early years of the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln faced an enemy far closer than the Confederate lines. Criticism from within his own cabinet. The most brilliant and perhaps difficult of those voices belonged to Salmon P. Chase, his Secretary of the Treasury. Chase's political career was legendary. He had served as the governor of Ohio. He actually had ran for the presidency. He had served as Secretary of the Treasury. He was also a Chief Justice. He was a United States Senator. He is one of the few Americans in our history who held a constitutional office in all three branches of our federal government. Quite an amazing story. Towering intellect, fierce conviction, and by all accounts, he was a man who was convinced that he should have been the president of the United States of America and not Lincoln. And he wasn't embarrassed to let people know his opinions. His criticism of Lincoln was relentless. He questioned his decisions openly and privately, complained about his leadership style. He regularly held private meetings with political allies to explore ways to advance his own prospects. Some of his letters were so sharp that Lincoln's friends urged him to dismiss Chase outright. Lincoln refused to do so. He did something that they didn't expect. He listened. In cabinet meetings, Chase often proposed the opposite of what Lincoln was proposing. He opposed Lincoln's decisions outright. He pushed back on strategy. He pressed for more aggressive actions. He openly disagreed with the president, sometimes with a tone that we would say bordered on insubordination. And yet Lincoln welcomed his input, not because it was comfortable, but because it was valuable. Lincoln, a great leader in his own right, understood something that many leaders never learned. Critical voices are not always rebellious voices. In fact, that's probably worth repeating, isn't it? Critical voices are not always rebellious voices. Sometimes in our generation, if we're leading in a ministry organization, we can get the idea that I am the leader. I am appointed of God. I am the man of God, the woman of God. I'm the leader that God has given. Therefore, to kick against the pricks is like kicking against God's will itself. And so we equate any pushback as rebellion to the vision God's given to us. It's not always where that's the case. Chase wasn't trying to destroy the Union. He just saw different angles. He highlighted blind spots. He thought from a mind that had been sharpened by dissent. His critiques, yeah, they were frustrating, but they often forced Lincoln to clarify his own reasoning and strengthen his decisions. And from that perspective, Chase was a valuable asset to Lincoln's cabinet. At one point, when Chase once again tendered his resignation because he had been frustrated by cabinet disputes, Lincoln surprised everyone in the room. He accepted the resignation with kindness, not retaliation. And he later appointed Chase as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, a role in which Chase would shape American law for generations. Why? Well, Lincoln was able to see past the criticism and see the contribution. This moment from American history reveals the poise of a great leader. He refused to shoot the naysayer. He didn't shoot the messenger. He understood that strong leaders don't silence critics, they sift them. They don't react to resistance, they refine their vision through it. Leaders understand that forward movement always disrupts the status quo, and disruption will always invite dissent. That's just a rule of leadership. In a world where criticism often feels like betrayal, Lincoln gives us a model of a deeper truth. Not every critic is an enemy. Sometimes they just might be the unexpected voices God uses to make us wiser, humbler, and stronger. We've been talking about moving forward when the path doesn't seem clear, and we've been illustrating this process along three major movements, three phases, three legs of the journey in this process of making the decision and communicating it. We've talked about in the first leg of the journey, gaining perspective, assessing, getting the big picture, identifying the fears that's limiting us. We've talked about making the decision, getting the counsel, studying it, seeing the next step, walking the path that God has given to us, take the next obedient step of faith, and then once we've made the decision, to own it. We began discussing in our previous episode this final leg of the journey of how we communicate it to our team. And we started with this idea of offering a path, not a promise. But when you offer a path forward, that is a different path than someone else expects you to offer. Expect that critics will be visible. Some want another pathway. Some would rather have the promise. Some want to be at the front of the line leading. How do we deal with critics? I guess from one perspective, critics are a tacit recognition that we're moving forward. Leaders who fail to disrupt the status quo rarely invite critics. But from the other perspective, it's not enjoyable to have every decision second guessed by armchair quarterbacks. I get it, you get it. That opening illustration that I started today's episode with Lincoln and Chase, which, by the way, this comes from the book by Doris Goodwin, Team of Rivals. If you haven't read the book, it's an excellent read. A Team of Rivals. It's just a great masterclass in leadership. But that tension that Lincoln and Chase embody gives us a lot to digest in today's modern day leadership culture. We know it's said that leadership and forward motion creates friction. We get it. It feels differently when that friction is directed against us personally. We hear people say, it's lonely at the top. We doubt that that's true until every decision we make is being scrutinized. The truth that's embodied in scriptures is that leaders will face naysayers. Some will have good intentions, some will not. When Moses was leading through the wilderness, people asked him, "Why have you brought us here to die? Wish we'd just stayed in Egypt." When David was leading his men through Ziklag, they became so discouraged that they openly spake of stoning David. Nehemiah had risked everything to rebuild the walls, only to hear his critics yell out, "Even if a fox went up the wall, it would knock it down." Is the servant above his master? I say that because didn't Jesus have critics? "This man deceives the people." God incarnate dwelt among men to lead them to salvation, and he had his share of naysayers. Should we expect less? Leaders shouldn't be shocked or surprised when pushback comes. While we shouldn't be shocked, we should at least be discerning. Not all criticism is created equal. This list that I'm going to share isn't exhaustive, but there are different reasons why people seem critical, and each, frankly, deserves a different type of response. Can I share with you 3 or 4 different types of people you might experience on your leadership journey that are ready to push back? I've given them my own titles. You may attach real life names to them. If you do, please do not put that in the comments, all right? The first one I call the cautious realist. This person isn't necessarily negative. God's just simply wired him to see risk. Their caution, it may be uncomfortable to hear, but it's often tremendously helpful. This is the voice that can save a leader from his blind spots. No, let's be honest. We have blind spots. They might ask hard questions, but they're not hostile. The cautious realist comes to us with measured tones, not emotional. Their heart and mind is that they're trying to think several steps ahead to see where this path might lead. They don't oppose your mission. They don't oppose your vision. They don't oppose your leadership. They just want to be reassured that you understand the risks that are potentially waiting ahead and that you're ready to deal with them. So I call them the cautious realist. We should listen carefully. Our flesh will want to act defensively, but we don't have to do that here. We can simply ask this question to clarify. What adjustments do you think we should make from your perspective? What are you seeing that I should be aware of, and what adjustments would bring a sense of peace to here? And affirm their value. They're bringing a balancing perspective. Don't view them as momentum stoppers. Instead, view them as co-laborers that are providing greater clarity. Cautious realist. Critic number 2, the constructive dissenter. He's loyal, but he's brutally honest. From his perspective, facts don't have feelings. He doesn't have tact, but he's not your enemy. They're not fighting against you. They're fighting for mission clarity, and we need these people. You'll know this person because even in the disagreements, they remain respectful. They don't challenge your leadership. They don't challenge your identity. They're challenging your ideas, and I think that's hard for us sometimes to differentiate. What's important to understand that this person does want the mission to succeed. His goal isn't to be right. It's just to be heard and to make sure that you have weighed the risk and the caution, and he's just bringing it to you straight down the line. Be grateful for them. Be grateful that they have the courage to respectfully raise questions. Their concern may save you future grief. Ask, can you help me understand your concern more fully? Value them. Hold them close to you. They're your allies, even if it feels unsettling at first. Number 3, you have the fear-driven follower. He's not against you either. He's just scared. Change is tough because it threatens their stability. Whether the change is good or not, that's not relevant to them. They just don't like change. So rather than rebuke them, reassure them. Often this person's response is rooted in emotion, not reason. Change to them is a threat rather than an opportunity. You'll hear more anxiety than opposition. As they're wondering out loud, what if, what if, what if? You can help them if you take a moment to slow down and empathize. Help them understand the why behind the decision. Don't focus on the entire journey. That's just going to heighten their fear. Just help them understand the next step. Affirm that God's presence is in the middle of the decision-making process. They don't need an argument. They just need a shepherd. Number 4, you'll know this one, the chronic complainer. Hopefully he's rare. He's probably inevitable. Usually these are noise makers and not insight givers. Often they're the loudest, but they can't be allowed to set the emotional temperature. As you interact with these people, you occasionally find that one person whose factory settings seems to be set at default discontentment. They're going to find flaws in every option you present, and they won't even like the options that they present. They'll offer many criticisms. Rarely will they offer a solution. You'll notice they probably are more of a drain on your energy levels than a replenishment. And yet, despite all that, their voice still matters. They're created in the image of God. Their negativity can still be used to show you a potential weakness or a blind spot. Every fiber of your soul will want to go into defensive mode. Don't personalize the criticism. Remember that they are perhaps carrying unresolved wounds or unmet expectations. And you are just the latest person to sort of feel that frustrating emotion being vented. Remain calm. Listen to their concerns. Ask God to keep you humble. And if there's even a kernel of truth in what they're sharing, be willing to act upon it. And then help them become more than just professional critics. Ask them, hey, I hear you. What solution would you recommend? If they cross boundaries, clarify them so that the disruptions are minimalized. They need firmness, they need clarity, they need consistency. They don't need retaliation. There's a danger in overreacting to criticism. We can become defensive, and that will hinder us from becoming a forward-moving leader. We start to shut down any feedback that protects us from blind spots. What happens by default is we just build a circle of yes people. And we move through dangerous territories. And sometimes by God's grace, we make it through, but oftentimes we hit landmines that could have been avoided if we hadn't shut the criticisms out, if we'd have seen them as messengers of God that could point out things for us to consider and be wiser in our leadership. A subtle shift happens in our leadership because we begin to lead from insecurity rather than conviction. We become more influenced by how to silence the critics than how to advance the mission. And we see this even in the life of King Saul. His reign commences with the open acknowledgement that he is God's chosen, God's anointed. But it ends with paranoia and defensiveness that destroys him, his entire lineage. Maybe we expect that from King Saul because he's the bad guy. But the same principle is at work in Moses' life. In one instance, the pressure becomes so overwhelmingly great and the frustration becomes so real that he reacts. He leads from reaction, and he strikes the rock that God told him to speak to. The end result, he's prohibited from leading the people into Canaan. We all know leaders that build walls and burn bridges. They lose relational equity and they shut out constructive feedback. I just want to say that if you're a leader, criticism is part of the territory. Don't shoot the naysayer. Learn from him. God can use even the naysayer for good. They'll help us. If nothing else, they'll help us learn humility and patience. Whatever their intentions are, good or otherwise, they can be used of God to help us clarify the mission and lead with passion and wisdom and conviction and clarity. And I think one of the good outcomes of critics, they help push us closer to the Lord. When Sanballat and Tobiah brought their criticisms, Nehemiah often, and maybe always, prayed before he reacted. The criticisms were absorbed, carried to the Lord, and he comes back and leads the people. So, if you're encountering critics, naysayers, here's a couple of questions I would challenge you to ask. Is any part of the criticism true or valid? What fears are behind their concerns? Does the pushback reveal a new opportunity or another step forward that maybe I had missed? How do I shepherd this person rather than reacting to them as an enemy? Healthy leadership remains calm and curious. There's always something to learn. We don't shoot the naysayers. Let me give you a few practical steps, and I'm done today. And when I think about critics coming to our life, and I've had people in my life, you have too, that question the decision you've made. Maybe it's a decision for your family. Maybe it's a decision for your department or your ministry or your organization. And you have people who were quiet during the decision-making process, but as soon as the decision is made, now they're vocal and questioning. I get all that. What do we do? Here's some practical steps, some takeaways. We learn to listen without absorbing the emotional weight. As a leader, we already have burdens to carry that are God-given. We don't need to pick up extra weight that are man-induced. So listen, but don't absorb the emotional weight. Number 2, listen to content more than tone. Sometimes the tone is off-putting. Sometimes the tone invites a defensive. It's almost like it's a bait to try to get us to snap. I get all that. Ignore the tone. Listen to the content. Asking, is any of this true, valid? What should I do with this? The tone may be confrontational, may be antagonistic, but the content may still contain truth. So here's the truth and act upon it. Number 3, never forget that all criticism is not created equal. Practice discernment. Critique what you hear without being critical. A walk in humility is the way to walk forward. Number 4, shepherd, pastor, lead faithful people and fearful people. Shepherd them. You know, sheep can get startled so easily. And there's principles there why God refers to his people as sheep. They react in ways, frankly, that aren't always in their best interest. They're not even healthy sometimes. Some people are the same in this respect. Shepherd them. Number 5, be confident without being arrogant. Ooh, so much easier said than done, isn't it? God not only resists the proud follower, he resists the proud leader as well. Number 6, continue to communicate next steps with clarity. Donald Miller, in his book, Marketing Made Simple, uses this statement quite a few times through the book. Avoid using cute and clever language as a substitute for clarity. Clarity beats cuteness every time. People can't follow us if the pathway isn't clear. So communicate next steps clearly. Number 7, and finally, pray for your critics. It's hard to be angry at someone when you spend time praying for God to bless them. I know, easier said than done, but it is a biblical mandate. And this idea of going forward and this idea of leading when the path isn't clear, we're learning how to take steps to move out of impossible circumstances, overwhelming circumstances, unclear circumstances. As a God-called leader, we aren't content to move forward alone. We want to take the people on the pathway with us. So as we prepare the people to move forward, prepare for the pushback. Shepherd the team through the tension. Refuse to see any team member or church member or staff member as the enemy. This is how we keep moving forward. Don't shoot the naysayer. Don't shoot the messenger. Sometimes they are God's silent whisper, maybe not so silent, but they are God's voice sometimes to help us see a blind spot that perhaps we've missed. So thank the Lord for them. Don't take it personally. Listen to the content, whatever is valid, act upon it, and keep following the pathway that God's put you on. And let's go forward together. Until we see you again at the next episode, may God bless you. Let's go forward together. I'll see you in our next episode.
Thanks again for joining us for this episode of Worldview with Dr. Mike Lester. You can connect with Mike at jmichaellester.com, where you'll also find more discipleship resources. Mike also serves as the president of Veritas Baptist College, an online university dedicated to training ministry leaders virtually so that they can stay where God has called them. Learn more about Veritas at vbc.edu. This podcast is hosted by Dr. Mike Lester and produced by Luke Clayton and the team at increasecreative.co. We hope this episode has helped you grow in your journey of being a faithful disciple of Jesus. And we look forward to having you join us again right here on Worldview.